Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, we learn about one of the biggest changes coming into the verse for Alpha 323. We get our questions answered about all things character creator, plus more major server meshing tests happened over the weekend. So over the weekend, there were a lot of insane server meshing tests. Basically, Cloud Imperium opened up the tech preview channel for Wave 2 testers with just the Stanton system available, but testing different server configurations to find what works best, as well as 2 dedicated player count increasing tests. Now, Cloud Imperium have mentioned that the sessions were particularly special as they tested the initial implementation of server meshing with Stanton, enabling multiple game servers to seamlessly manage the star system simultaneously, saying that this marked a pivotal moment for the project, with more than 700 players successfully connecting to a single instance of Stanton for the first time. And I think the highest number that it got to was something like 740, which is very impressive. Now, CIG engineers worked alongside the community, implementing real-time hotfixes and gathering a wealth of data to refine their systems for future tests. So pretty exciting to see how this is all going, and I'm looking forward to checking out more of these tests as they come along, but things are moving fast and they seem to be going really well. Now, on the Alpha 323 front, there was a new build cooking for release last night to the Evocati, being Monday, but unfortunately it failed, so they will try again tonight, being Tuesday. Now, this new build will certainly have more 323 features, with them saying specifically that the patch notes will likely be split into 2, as there are a massive amount of FPS combat balance changes. So, a bit like we see with Arena Commander's patch notes, the FPS patch notes will be separate to the other patch notes, because there is just so much coming in. So it looks like this is the patch that will have this whole wealth of FPS updates. Very excited to see how all that feels and give my feedback. Now, it's also great to see so much continued testing going on for many aspects of Star Citizen, all of which are just elevating the game to a whole new different level, completely different to what we have now. And with all of the features coming in for Alpha 323 and server meshing finally getting tested by players, there are great things on the way. With that said, let us get to the show. Now, this week's Inside Star Citizen was a deep look at the cargo and upcoming hangar feature for 323. First up, for persistent hangars, these are basically hangars that are instanced and assigned to you when you select your home location. And the size of the hangar that you get is determined by the size of your largest ship, providing you with a hangar that is plausible for the size of that ship. Right now, we don't know exactly what happens if you buy a bigger ship, either in-game or with real cash, but I presume that they will just then allocate you a larger hangar. But there is that potential that if you have spent time decorating this hangar and then you get a bigger one, you may have to redo it. Unless they have a way to scale the layout or mark up the layout so that it scales with it. I doubt it, but hopefully in a couple of weeks we can get answers to that one on Star Citizen Live. Now, this personal hangar is always your hangar, and you can use it like a home, leaving things anywhere you want, inviting friends to come round, and decorating it how you please. Now, it wasn't mentioned about whether we can log in and out of this hangar, so again, it's another question to be asked for Star Citizen Live. So as you come to land at your home location, you request landing as normal via the ATC, and if you have a personal hangar at that location, it will then just instantly allocate you your hangar. Now, when it comes to decorating your personal hangars, you will be using the freight elevator kiosk to call up any items that you have, at which point you will then be able to grab them from the elevator and basically put them anywhere you want in the hangar, with that persisting time and time again. Now, I don't know if we will be able to display every hangar item that we have earned over the years, as I do have pages and pages of hangar flair. My guess is that some of the hangar flair will be ready for use and others might need to be updated to the current standards, but again, that is just another question to ask. I also like how it shows using this trolley, which will be very handy in hangars, provided the stuff stays on the trolley when you're pushing it around, but I think we will also see these hover trolleys that we saw at CitizenCon. Hopefully for 323, I would think so, as they will be very handy for when moving not just cargo around, but any item that you have. Now, there are quite a few new kiosks for these hangars, one being the freight elevator kiosk, as we know, which has UI to help us deal with large volumes of cargo, with the left-hand side showing the elevator space itself, and then the right-hand side being the player's inventory. And I assume that you will just technically drag and drop or drag across what you want onto the elevator volume and lay it out how you please, a bit like Tetris, and then it will come up in the elevator. This also means that you will need to actually think about how you are loading your elevator so that you can access what you need first to help optimize the loading process, something that could take a bit of practice. They also say that we will be able to pre-fill boxes of varying sizes, up to 32 SEU, with the items that we want, making the loading process easier rather than dumping everything onto the elevator floor and having to pick it up ourselves, which will be a very nice way of doing it, so very little messing around. Now, another kiosk that is found in the hangar, and pretty much everywhere really, are the item bank. Now, this will allow players to store and retrieve smaller items like clothing, armor, and weapons quickly and easily, and as mentioned, they will be found everywhere. There will be many of them, and this to me kind of confirms that for 323, the local inventory is going away, and it will be now physicalized inventory, or physical inventory, meaning we won't be able to stand in the middle of a landing zone and have access to all of our inventories. We will either need to use the item banks to get them, or our hangars. I do wonder if this will apply to ships in 323, as they have been working very hard to fully flesh out the lockers in ships and elsewhere, I suppose, but I really hope this is the case, as it would be a big step forwards. Now, the final kiosk for hangars is the ASOP terminals, which, as mentioned, is inside the hangar, although the normal terminals do still exist and can be used if you don't have a personal hangar in that location, and when you request a ship or a vehicle, it will rise up and drop down from the hangar floor. Basically, the hangar floor will open up, this cool UI will come around the outside warning you of this, and all of the lighting inside the hangar changes, making it look like a big deal that something's happening. So happy that they managed to get this in for 323, as it just stops ships from popping in and out, which is never a good look, and it is something that Chris hasn't wanted for a long while. Also, this means that we will be able to just go directly to our hangars, request any ship or vehicle that we want, as and when we want, without having to go back and forth to the usual ASOP terminals, which is just amazing. And I'm so glad that they have made this possible, and although we won't be able to use the freight elevators to call up ground vehicles initially for 323's release, this will mean that you can spawn any ground vehicle, or all of your ground vehicles, and then drive them off the hangar floor, then spawn your ship and load the vehicles as you want. So you could literally, I don't know how many ground vehicles you have, but you could have as many ground vehicles as you want in your hangar, ready to get loaded into your ship as and when you want to. So a massive win there in many areas, and will make that whole loss of not being able to use ground vehicles in freight elevators a bit less of a blow. Oh, and if you do jump into the hangar space while it's going down or closing, you will either just die if it is too far, otherwise you'll just come back up and go back to its default state. Now, hangar sizes have thankfully been increased as well. This is to accommodate the walkway around the outside of the landing pad so that the player has a place to move around. Extra large hangars are now 20% larger, with the large hangars are now 30% larger. The medium hangars are just taller, and the small hangars have seen no change to their size at all, but they have reclassified certain ships to fit into the medium hangars where they were previously classified as small. So it should mean that fitting in and landing in these hangars will be a lot easier and less buttock clenching. Now, finally, they spoke about auto-loading, which essentially means that your ship's cargo will be loaded and unloaded automatically, so you don't have to do it yourself. But there will be a time limit associated and a fee, and the ship during this process will be stored away, and it will also be locked away, so you cannot spawn it until it is done. Also, the timers for this process will vary from location to location based on what kind of location it is. For example, some places might be more optimized for offering this process, like a cargo deck or landing zone, versus somewhere like an outpost. Now, I really like this a lot, as it is a good sort of logical trade-off. Of course, times will vary more in the future as well, and the type of NPC that you can hire might change, and you will get to see this physically happening, but some NPCs might be better at loading certain boxes versus others. Now, all of these changes will affect everyone in a big way. regardless of whether you are interested in cargo hauling or not. It will allow for manual loading and proper cargo management, automated loading, which I know is a big one for a lot of people, and also being able to stock up on various commodity types to either sell in bulk or maybe wait for the prices to increase. It'll also make multi-crewing much more rewarding and enjoyable as you can all work together in the same hangar, getting a ship ready. This changes so much in the game, and it's certainly one of my most anticipated features for 323. But that was Inside Star Citizen, one of the all-time greatest episodes. We will have a Q&A from the people who brought us this feature on Star Citizen Live in a couple of weeks, but I loved everything about that. Let us move on to Star Citizen Live. So this week's Star Citizen Live was a Q&A follow-up to the previous Inside Star Citizen episode talking about the character customizer. Before we get to the questions, they did mention that they do intend to do a studio tour of the new Manchester offices in the near future. They just want to finish off a few sections before they do so. And the tool that we are getting for 323 to create our character is the exact same tool as what they will be using to create the NPCs, I think for 323 and beyond. Anyway, for the first question, will all heads from the old creator be in the new one? And they say all the old heads are still in this new one, plus they will be adding an additional 60 heads soon as well, and the old heads have had a visual update to make them look even better. Also, some little bit of information about the new customizer. There is a undo and redo option, which is certainly a nice feature, as I always make mistakes. Now, the next question is kind of a similar question in regards to the current heads that we have available. Will they be in this 323 update as well? And they will be, plus many, many more to be added alongside them. Next question, where do we use this character customizer? Is it as you are entering the game like we have now, or will it be in the persistent universe at some point, like a shop that we can visit and change our appearance? Now, they say to begin with, it will be in the same place as the current customizer, but in the future, it is intended that these Calliope machines, which is the name of the machine in the verse lore that allow us to change our sort of facial features, will be found in the verse where you can go and pay an in-game fee and change up your character's appearance. Now, this I really like to hear, being able to go to a shop, a bit like going to a barber's, but where you can go and just change your face, change everything really. Also, someone on my stream had a great idea while we were watching this episode, saying it would be cool if we could use a mirror in-game, like in your ship or in your hab, and then change up your hair, your beard, or your makeup, or maybe take off and put on piercings. I thought that would be a good idea. Not changing the shape of your face in any way, but being able to style your hair differently or do your makeup differently. Which, yeah, a great idea. Hopefully CIG can consider this, as that'll be nice day-to-day waking up looking a little different. Anyway, next question is, how does the load and save function work after major updates and wipes? Also, will any updates make the older characters incompatible with certain facial features? So firstly, in regards to wipes, they have the usual persistent database save, as we see now, but this time it will be hooked into the long-term persistent system, so our characters will be saved from patch to patch without resetting every time. Also, there is an option to save out and export your character's files, and then save that on your PC, and even share it with others if you wanted, so it is practically safe. They say they can't make any promises if a certain feature becomes problematic or they have a new feature, but these files are intended to be backwards compatible, so hopefully there aren't any issues there. And these exported files are encrypted and can only be read by their systems. Now, the next question is simply, who is Bioticorp? Now, in the Star Citizen universe, they are a massive medical technology giant and are at the forefront of medical innovation. Now, they did say that there was a Galactopedia entry for Bioticorp, but I haven't been able to find it. Whether it's supposed to be coming soon or I just missed it, I don't know. But if anyone finds it in the Galactopedia, please do let me know. Next question, will we be able to change the scene settings and facial expressions when we get to the review tab? Now, there is a little bit of a personality added to the review section where your character will move and do stuff, but they do want to expand it. It is something that is doable. The VoIP system, so face over IP, should still allow you to change your character's expression with your own face. That should be still enabled. But in regards to FOIP, they will revisit this system at a later date, as the quality can definitely be improved. Next question, does star hair work with beards? Do beards have any physics? And yes, beards have the same physics that the hair does using this pendulum system, and so will have that movement plus collision with the character's chest, for example. Now, there is a bit more they want to do to get it looking even better, and also apparently even the nose hairs move. So I will certainly be able to create a perfect match. Next question, can we have long hair below the shoulders or have it hide under a helmet, or even adjusted when wearing hats? So they say right now there is a limit to the length of hair, which is basically to the shoulders. This is just to minimize clipping and other aspects for Star Citizen specifically. It is possible to have it longer, but that is just the current set limit. Hats and masks do have an adapted hair visual for each hairstyle that will be coming in 3.2.3, so if you put a hat on, your hair will be changed to look appropriate for what you're wearing, and it does sound like they may change the limit to the length of hair in the future, rather than just having it to the shoulders. Next question is, will we be able to dye specific strands of hair? And they say we won't be able to do a single strand of hair differently, but you can adjust the colour from the tip and from the root to make it look somewhat different. Next question is simply, what is next for hair? Now, they say they want a lot more variety. Expect to see more pyro-themed hairstyles as well when that comes along, and the same goes for all the other locations. Dependent on what style of location that is, we will see hairstyles themed to that. But other areas for the future are fur for uniforms, plus creatures and animals. Now, it will be great to see fur and that kind of aesthetic on armors and clothing. I think that would be super cool, especially creating gameplay around the resource gathering from creatures, as well as crafting, of course. But also, there is a lot of fauna planned. This work will also apply to all the creatures and animals that come along. Next question, will we ever be able to change our body shape or size? Now, they do plan to look into making it possible for players to adjust the body sizes and heights, but it is a very complex process that will need to be figured out, and they want to do it. It'll just take some time, but they have some ideas, and they will get round to it when priorities allow. Next question, will the character customizer ever allow us to scan our own heads and get them imported into game? Now, they actually spent a long time discussing how they could make this happen, and so it does sound like for the long term, this could be a thing. So I would say it's something that could certainly come along one day, which would be very cool. I know when I had my head scanned, I had to sit inside that rig with 50 SLR cameras and pull specific poses, but obviously with technology advancing, the potential for having that happen does sound quite plausible. So that would be really cool, having players' faces actually in the game. But again, that's not something we will see anytime soon, but it's nice to know it's a possibility one day. Next question, will there be more vibrant eye colours? And yes, they do have a few unusual eye colours coming for 3.2.3, but they do want to revisit the options for the future, as well as make options for contact lenses. Now, eyes themselves will be expanded upon to have more interesting features as well, and this could even include things like asymmetrical options, or maybe eyes that are potentially blind. I don't know how that would be represented for the player, but visually, from an external standpoint, I think that would look pretty cool to give a lot more interesting looks to our characters. Now, the next question is basically, one of the backers looks like Danny DeVito. How far would you allow the customization of his character to go to look like him? Now, they did say that in regards to the range of heads available, they will be adding a lot more different types of heads. They did say that the pool will explode with loads more, and there is a head in the upcoming drop of new heads that looks very similar to Danny DeVito, but in terms of body and size, I think that's a completely difficult thing to handle, especially when it comes to metrics and being able to sit in a cockpit or use certain items. So I don't know if those sorts of height ranges would ever be possible, but visually you could at least get a head that looks like him. Final question is, what is there that you want for the customizer on a personal level? Now, for players, being able to add their heads in-game was one of them. More randomization with a lot more range of customization, so if you hit randomize, it does things a lot more interestingly rather than it sort of limiting it sounds like. But also they would like to flesh out the review section, as we heard, with a lot more options to get a better understanding of what your character might look like in certain situations. Anyway, that was a great insight into what is coming for 323, but also beyond. Clearly, this customizer is leaps and bounds better than what we have now. I cannot wait to get it into our hands and get creating all of my characters. Just seeing what the limitations are, plus seeing all these characters come to the PU, getting players and NPCs looking much better will just be so refreshing. Now, Star Citizen Live is not on next week as it is the Easter holidays here in the UK, but it will return in 2 weeks' time with the members of the cargo team answering our questions from this week's Inside Star Citizen. Next week's Inside Star Citizen will be a return of the team working on things like the player interaction experience, looking at visors, the lens, looting screens, and the new shopping app. So, should be an interesting one. But that was Star Citizen Live. Let us move on. So also this week, a new Lawmakers post was released, answering more of our lore questions. The roadmap was updated, and this fortnight it moved the new character customizer, reputation, hostility, and dynamic crosshair into the committed state. It also added the Hornet F7C Mark II card onto the 323 column, and mentioned that the unique item recovery card will be removed for the time being as it needs more work, and will return when ready, which is a big shame, but if it needs more work, then so be it. Finally, the Overdrive initiative is continuing on. I think Phase 3 should be rolling out this week, and I have not even completed Phase 1. I just have no time. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.